First day of spring, Wednesday, March 20th. We're returning to S311, everything from here from home. And when Mr. Kowski back with us, we started a walkthrough on the early sections of the bill. Broke off on page 5 yesterday, and so pick back up from there. Senator McCormick, ask all the questions you want in whatever level of detail you want.
I'll take us the opposite one to the council. I do want to ask a quick question before you give that. What's the agenda for the rest of the morning?
Through, this is what we're doing until 11:45.
Okay.
At which point we need to look at appropriations amendment to 213, which is up on the floor today.
Okay, because I have a feeling I may get called out around 11:45 on a different floor, but it's for something else.
Perfection.
Great, okay.
That's synchronicity.
Sorry to ask, but I was out yesterday. Do we have anything for?
Yes,
Yes.
you have draft 3.1 of the strike all amendment to S311, which Senate Economic Development passed, and an outline of the bill for just the high points of each section.
Draft 3.1.
Yes, and then this you should also add. Yeah, this little chart thing and an outline that helps orient the high points. So on page 5. Line 5. There's again. Struck the reference to priority housing project. So priority housing project is sprinkled in throughout Act 250 as multiple different sections. So all the references to it are being struck. Still on page 5, section 3 is amending the Act 250 exempt section. And there's 3 exemptions in it.
The Senator McCormick section, the Act 250 exemptions.
So first, subsection T is added, so no permit or permit amendment is required for the construction of improvements for an accessory dwelling unit. As defined in 24 VSA 4303. So 4303 currently allows for the addition of one accessory dwelling unit to a dwelling unit. That is up to 900 square feet or 30% of the square footage of the house. And it has to be on an owner occupied lot. I can read you the exact wording on that definition if it's helpful. Currently though, not all of these accessory dwelling units necessarily trigger Act 250 jurisdiction, though some may.
I mean, what is it that said some may?
Well, and so it can depend because, individual residential construction doesn't usually trigger Act 250. However, if it hits one of the other thresholds, like, if it was in a large development more than 10 units.
If you were in a development with 9, and you had an ADU, do you now become 10? Off you go.
Well, that's an interesting question because usually. The ADU is really constructed by the homeowner. Also, ADUs don't always involve construction. So true. So, yeah.
Anyone?
I think it's talking about verified, when we say exemptions, this is just exemptions to Act 250, so an ADU would still be required to say, maybe get like a wastewater permit. If applicable.
If applicable, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all these sections are in the Act 250 statute.
Yeah, and so as big a fan as I am of ADUs, you also need to see them administered properly. And I saw after the fact, it happened quite fast. A non-owner occupied home. A house that was split into a duplex, built an ADU in the back. But it was 2,200 square feet but the first floor was called a shop and the second floor was called an ADU, and the town administrator thought that was close enough. and approved it. My town does not say you shall undo things that were in compliance, so. For me, it's like a great idea and a cautionary tale all in one.
So next,
I love it for you. What, these are exemptions from existing environmental review. What environmental review happens in this?
Are you on the bottom of page 5?
so,
Yes,
Okay.
well,
and into space 6.
so for accessory dwelling units specifically, the municipality can't prohibit accessory dwelling units. So. Yep, that's. They may or may not trigger the need for some other A&R permit, it really is site specific and dependent on the situation, because some of these things are within an existing building or built. Converting an existing structure into a living arrangement. So some of them probably require no environmental review currently.
It's not a land use issue so much as a. It's happening on land because everything's land, but it's not the kind of questions that actually. Am I right?
I don't, what do you mean? So, we're talking about accessory dwelling units, they may or may not currently trigger Act 250. And so for the ones that do. This is giving an exemption, whether or not. An accessory dwelling unit would trigger any other kind of review, I really can't speak to in depth because of the sort of variety of forms or shape they take. So there may or may not be any other review.
And where in the world is this part of Act 250?
In section 3,
Yeah,
yes, this is an exemption from Act 250.
no, even though it doesn't explicitly mention it, does it say in Act 250?
Yes. Section 6081 is the exemption section of Act 250.
But to Senator McCormick's point, if you were in these situations and you needed a wetlands permit or a wastewater, all of those other permits and municipal permitting would be applicable
Yes, but it is very dependent.
from the, yes.
Okay, within the talk in the hall, just the talk among legislators. Has been that all the Act 250 exemptions are paired with municipal regulations. They are paired with municipal regulations, that we're not actually letting things just go, that there's still an environmental review that is being left at the local level. So what is the municipality picking up here?
So. I suspect the word in the hall you're referring to is actually not on this section specifically, but about the broader exemption we're gonna talk about in a little while. So currently. Under the municipal zoning, a town cannot outright prohibit an accessory dwelling unit if it meets the definition. And if it doesn't meet that definition, they can prohibit it. But a town is allowed to apply the same level of review that it does to a single family dwelling. So the same review, dimensional or other controls that it would apply to a single family dwelling. So that's the other thing, is if a town actually doesn't do any development review of single family dwelling units, they wouldn't here. But if they do, they have to apply the same level of review to an accessory dwelling unit.
So basically, it's a number review on an ADU is more stringent than a single family.
Yes.
The one in question that was, had some issues, it would still have proper setbacks, no, property lines and stuff like
Well,
that.
so this is so whether or not your example would have actually triggered active thinking is an open question, and so it might not have qualified for this, but if someone isn't actually enforcing the law, you can't like design a law to get at that.
Yes, and the administrator is now a former administrator.
So, yeah. Okay, so next, there is no permit amendment. Is required for the construction of improvements for converting a structure used for a commercial purpose to 29 or fewer units of housing. So this is specific to converting an existing commercial space into 29 or fewer units of housing, because there's a jurisdictional trigger in this bill related to 30 units of housing triggering Act 250, so this is to encourage the conversion of commercial space to housing. They will not need a permit amendment to do so.
So Act 250 has many criteria, traffic, impact on water, sewer, police service. Even if a commercial facility have far fewer people in it every day than once converted to 29 units of housing. So is there no way under this exemption to examine the impact on traffic, lighting, parking, sewer, water, police, school?
That would fall to the municipality if the municipality has,
Such file?
yes. All right, and then on the top of page 6. So yesterday, we talked about 3 different triggers for the construction of housing. Now on page 6, there's an exemption, so no permit or amendment is required for development or subdivisions located on a tract or tract of land owned or controlled by a person within a designated center and within a radius of 1/4 mile of the boundary of a designated village center and 1/2 mile of the boundary of, that should say other designated centers. So this provision is one of the sunset provisions. It is sunsetting on June 30th, 2029. So this is what they're calling an interim provision. So it is an exemption for designated centers and a radius around them from needing permit amendments for all development.
Thank you, and that sunset is just for BB,
Yes,
not the previous ones.
I don't think so, but we are gonna get to that in a minute. Yeah. Yeah. And that coincides with, or is interim in anticipation of the creation of tier 1A and B under the later sections of this bill.
So one further thing. Practically speaking, when somebody is looking at, say this passed, right? And they're looking at this to see, does my property qualify or not? And the radius goes through the property, does that? Or does it need to be fully contained within radius?
I mean, I think just you could add the word fully if that would help.
I guess I would just flag it as a point that I should miss part forward, but I would just like to clarify. That's all. And I would want to clarify it in a way that made it clear.
I think yes, so in other areas, we have used, I think, the phrase located entirely within too, so we could, yeah, we're entirely within the designated center, so that probably would help.
Sure. I mean. I'm open to. Partial, but
Okay,
that's a conversation of, sure,
okay, yeah,
But clarity would,
clarity would help.
so this is for, it calls out, village centers. Oh, quarter mile just for village, designated village centers.
and then the other it should probably say other designated.
The others
Yeah,
are a half mile.
yep.
Okay. Some designated centers have a lot more review and pre-planning built into that. Okay, thank you.
All right, so section 4 is an entirely different topic, but still within Act 250. So it's adding new language, on line 7, the applicant shall post a sign provided by the district commission on the subject property in a visible location 14 days prior to the hearing on the application and until the permit is issued or denied. The commission shall provide a sign that shall include a general description of the project, the date and place of the hearing, the identification number of the application and internet address, and contact information for the district commission. The design of the sign shall be consistent throughout the state and shall prominently state this property has applied for an Act 250 permit.
So we have Z permits that you see in windows all the time. Just mean that there is no such thing as the Z counterpart for Act 250. No physical sign required to tell you there's something pending here.
Yeah. Section 5, still in Act 250, this time talking about evidence, using other agency permits as evidence. So it's changing the presumptions on other permits. So the state and municipal permits, the district commission shall not delay in issuing under this chapter, issuing a permit under this chapter on the grounds that the development or subdivision has not received one or more of others required state permits or approvals. However, it may include a condition that the construction may not commence until such other required permits or approval are received. So I'll stop there first. This is saying that, when when someone make an Act 250 application, they do usually say, I have applied for other state agency permits. I think there's conflicting information currently whether or not the permit itself can be issued until the other permits have been fully issued. Often there is a pause in the Act 250 process until the other permits are resolved. And so this is saying they can issue the permit conditional on the other permits being issued.
Is it may? Let me just check. My understanding is that, although many people think about it as Act 50, it's the current standard operating procedures that the Act 250 permit won't issue until you have obtained all your other permits, municipal and state. And they are like the gatekeeper for proceeding with the project.
So I think you can hear testimony on that. I think that sometimes they are already issued conditionally on the other permits being issued, but there wasn't a clear statement in the law. So the committee requested this language. I think it often plays out the way you said, but it may not. But anyways, you may want to hear more testimony of that.
Right. More to learn. I mean, I think I get my understanding of the discussion underneath. It is something along the lines of how can we shorten up the timeline and not necessarily have everything play out in series. You might do more things in parallel, and it would be good to know that all permits that are required by law are obtained and exactly when this is the thing. Who wants to be
I did, but I'm gonna hold it for now.
okay?
I'm good.
So on page 7. There's some language regarding the use of these permits more broadly, so. The Natural Resources Board shall allow the acceptance of a permit or permits or approval of any state agency with respect to criterion 1 through 5. Or a permit or permits of a specified municipal government with respect to criterion 1 through 7. And 9 and 10. Or a combination of such permit or approvals in lieu of evidence by the applicant. So I'll stop there quickly. Currently, it's a may, and there is a may by rule. And so there is a rule that the NRB has adopted that identifies which permits can be used for which criteria. So that is a rule that is adopted, but this is a blanket shall. And then next, a district commission shall accept determinations issued by the DRB under the municipal statute with respect to local Act 250 review of municipal impacts. The acceptance of such approval, positive determinations, permit or permit shall constitute conclusive evidence that the application is not detrimental to the public health and welfare for, with respect to the specific requirement for which it is accepted. So currently under Act 250, there is a presumption.
It's like a so-called rebuttable presumption.
Yes.
That a permit indicates to be satisfied the Act 250 criteria.
Yes.
And that's specified currently by rule,
Well, it's,
in which cases what permits create that rebuttable presumption.
Yes.
And this is saying. So this really asserts that such permits satisfy the criterion as opposed to evaluating whether or not that permit really does match what the question that would be answered to satisfy the Act 250 version of that thing.
yes.
I apologize, I knew that I have so many questions, but. I will just say that I think I need this one more time, like I don't think I understand what this is doing.
So currently, because we haven't talked about this issue, I think for a really long time. When someone is going to get an Act 250 permit, they have to look at the criteria. And so like one is all different water issues. And so what they do is with their application, they make statements about whether or not the project will have an undue adverse, and so like one is air and water pollution. And there's different things you have to specify that you're not going to have, in fact, that you're not going to create additional water pollution. And so you can then look to the Act 250 rule, which says a stormwater permit from the ANR is has a rebuttable presumption that I am not going to create additional stormwater pollution. So when then an opponent can then challenge whether or not that permit is actually sufficient to address all the stormwater concerns in that project.
Yeah.
Or whether or not there's a deficiency in that permit that is overlooking something. And so this change, however, is saying, no, that is whatever agency permit they are bringing is conclusive proof that they have met the requirement under the criteria.
Okay.
Is the vulnerability issue here that you can challenge a state permit? And therefore, although the rule may specify that it does create such a rebuttable presumption, the permit itself can be challenged as should not have been issued because it didn't satisfy ANR's permit rules.
Yeah, and so the language in this part of the statute is pretty old, and so I think some of the conversations in Senate Economic Development were, well, there a lot of additional transparency and public participation has been built into ANR permits in the last 10 years. And so previously they were perhaps more opaque and difficult to weigh in on.
Okay.
So perhaps they are now stronger permits because they have been through transparent and public processes.
And line 4, where it creates a similar construct for a municipally issued permit. Is there, who determines whether that permit is substantially equivalent to the requirements of the Act 50 criteria? In other words, I mean, I can see if it's a state, we're saying, okay, those state permits create a rebuttable exemption. Then is it not saying in line 4 that for permits that they specify municipal government with respect to A1 through 7 have the same impact, like you're good to go because it is now treated as a rebuttable exemption, satisfying the criteria.
I don't know how that works currently, honestly. I don't, so
Right. And so my underlying question centers around the consistency of review and permit issuance at the municipal level compared to the state level. Not to pick on my current hometown, but we just had a permitting issue where a particularly permissive approach was taken that caused problems for abutters.
I just, a little institutional context here. I don't know when dispositive permits were first proposed, but I know what I can remember as far back as about 1992. Maybe off by years, but ever since I've been here, that comes up from time to time. And the argument was that the adjective that's used is duplicative, that there being agency permits and municipal permits. And then the requirement of the Act 250 permit is duplicative, and we've generally decided on an almost annual basis that it's not duplicative, because the question is looked at in a different angle. I'm just curious in the Economic Development Committee's process, have they discovered errors in that thinking, or is there new information? I don't know if you can answer that, but the question I want answered before I did a definitive judgment on this is, what's changed? Maybe something has changed, but then what's changed?
so the only information I can give you is what I already said, which is they are aware that ANR's permitting processes in the last 10 to 15 years have been updated. And so they're in some cases more transparent and have easier public participation. And so that has strengthened their confidence potentially that there is opportunity, there's more opportunity now to participate at the individual ANR permit level than to go through it at the Act 50 permit level.
Mr. Chairman, I would hope that the committee would look into this with, I'm not gonna say skepticism, but with, at least with curiosity. Because this does away with a right that presently exists with Vermonters. And this is a right of Vermonters, and this says, well, you've had the right, and now you're not gonna have it anymore. I wanna make sure that we have solid need to do that.
I mean, well, I raised one question about the equivalency of a municipal permit and a state permit for satisfying the criteria listed A1 through 5, A1 through 7, 9, 10. The other thing I have yet to really understand why Act 250 is just duplicative. And why a municipality would rely on the Act 250 criteria to satisfy its curiosity about the appropriateness of the project. The duplication seems to only propagate one way. But it seems logical, you could say it could go either. So I have never heard a good explanation of why that is, why a municipality might not forego yield to the review conducted by Act 250 to say Act 250 has satisfied our concerns on our behalf. Therefore, we're eliminating our review. That could be the one that might be judged duplicative. So I don't know the answer, but it just seems like if you could look at the scale as going by the play.
I think it's a valid question.
Okay, next section on page 8. Oh, well, and so still in this section, it strikes the reference to the board adopting rules to fill in the details of this section, because they're taking away that, so. But then section 6, still in Act 250, but a new topic. Compliance self-certification. So the district commission may require that a person who receives a permit under this chapter report on a regular schedule to the district commission on whether or not the person has complied with and is in compliance with the conditions required in that permit. The report shall be made on a form provided by the board and shall be notarized and contain self-certification to the truth of the statements. So this is it's a specific directive that a district commission may require self-certification that someone is in compliance with their permit conditions. I think that district commissions already have the authority to do this, but it isn't said anywhere. So this is just spelling out that this is a tool that they could use if they wanted to require someone to annually or semi-annually file a certification that they are complying with their permit.
Is the alternative, is the commission site visit?
Well, I don't think district commissions are in the business of enforcement much these days, checking in on permit conditions. So.
I'm sorry, so. Does, when we say here. The person who receives a permit under this chapter, this is. Any or all Act 250 permits. And not a part of the. I guess if we're exempting them, it's not like they automatically get a permit until they have to do this.
Correct.
Right, so anybody who's exempted but not.
Correct. And laws are generally prospective unless otherwise stated, so I think this would be a tool moving forward for a district commission that issues a new permit. Yeah. Thanks. So section 7 is a report. So on or before January 15, 2025, the Department of Housing and Community Development, after consultation with the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and members from the Regional Planning Commission, shall submit a report to Senate Economic Development and House Agriculture, Food, Resiliency, and Forestry. Good, you guys are not on that list.
Yeah, I take, I'm flagging my copy, finite soils is a conversation we often have in this world, yeah, a little surprised to me to see this, but whatever. Use your own adventure, Bill.
And so recommending appropriate updates to the ratios of mitigation for primary agricultural soil under Act 250. So just to quickly review, currently under Act 250, if someone is subject to Act 250, needs a permit. Criterion 9B asks if they are going to convert any primary agricultural soils on that property due to the project, and if so, they need to mitigate that harm. There's a formula. And they are either required to do on-site mitigation by conserving soils on that property. And hopefully doing creative site design to avoid the conversion to the extent possible. Or they have the potential to pay a fee to go to the HCB so that soils elsewhere are conserved for future agricultural use.
Mr. Chair.
Otherwise,
Thank you, council. Now that I'm in wetlands land in my head with the net gain policy, and we use kind of hub 8 versus hub 12, like the area of land that you have to show you're saving has to be within a watershed. Is there any, within the same watershed, is there anything like that for prime ag, like you have to put it in a certain area? Related to, I don't know, soil quality of.
So it's similar but a little bit different. So there is a net here, so we are talking about a ratio here.
Yeah.
So currently in statute, it is between 2:1 and 3:1 protected acres. Depending on the type of soil that you are going to be impacting. There is also a lower rate for if you're in a designated area or if you're in an industrial park.
Okay.
So there's a couple of carve outs. And then, oh, and you asked about where, so
Yeah.
let me see what the specific. I do not remember off the top. So I think it's a little bit different, so it's, the HCB is to use it for permanent conservation easements. I don't know if I know this is a long statute describing. So I don't know if I can find it quickly. So the answer is, I don't know.
Well, I think, just to put it out there, the reason for my question is, I think it would make sense if there were, requirements around types of soil and where you can be, because in Vermont, we have different quality soil for different agricultural purposes. So you can grow things some places, you can't grow things well in other places, and I would hate to lose food quality soils to be put someplace that maybe you would grow hemp or something that.
Sure, so, okay, so the language does say, it's based on the recent price per acre to acquire conservation easements for primary agricultural soils in the same geographic region as the proposed development.
Okay, so geographic region is kind of the area that we're talking about, okay,
Yeah.
intriguing, thank you.
yeah, well, does that mean Vermont?
Yeah, is that defined?
This is a very complicated, there are people who work on this component specifically
That is not you.
that are not me. I mean, I can tell you the basics.
Maybe I'll put a little flag right here.
Yeah.
And say, oh, intriguing, and if someone knows a lot, they can always even tell us about it.
And so I will just say that that's why, maybe at least part of the reason why Senate Economic Development was interested in changing ratios, and they just went with an report instead, but this is a little bit complicated. Yep.
Great points.
And that's the usual thing. Let's change the ratio because it's constitutes cost. Therefore, we would like to reduce that cost.
It's not complicated, such soils are cheaper sewage, cheaper driveways, cheaper ditching. All the things that cut costs for the developers of those things, and they also, you can build stuff in places that are private soils, it's a little tougher. So it's growing crops.
Greenfields are pretty attractive site for
Libraries, schools, police barracks,
anything.
Yeah.
So, okay.
clover leaves. The
Important.
Right.
Well,
Who's the, is it
And the
Richard
firms of-
Brady that who knows the ins and outs of the cutting soils and concepts?
No, I mean, I can give you more information, I was alluding to the agency of ag, yeah. Yeah, they do have a staff member who specifically works on this,
Yeah. Okay.
but,
And how many?
I am technically supposed to know this. So the statute on just the primary agricultural soil element of criterion 9G is 4 pages. So
So
I
we're,
gave you the highlights, I can give you more details,
sure, more nuance than we might guess.
yes.
This is also, I'll need a refresher on prime versus primary. We use those terms, they're not interchangeable.
Sure, there are 3 main types of soils covered under this, they're ranked 1 through 10. The ratio that you have to apply is based on the quality of the soil. But this is just a report on that, so I wasn't fully prepared to go
That's
into that.
okay, we're inquiring minds want to know, all right, let's keep going.
So the last Act 250 section in this part is these repeals. So on page 9, 6081 O and P are repealed. Those are both statutes related to the primary priority housing projects. And then again, in B, 30 VSA 55, priority housing project stretch code is repealed because again, priority housing projects as a concept is going away. Then section C, subsection C, from last year's POMAC, section 16A. This bill and the previous pages have struck the sunset provisions from last year. And so this is the other provision related to those sunsets, so that's being repealed because they're being repealed. And then subsection D are these provisions, so I mentioned this yesterday. So first, well, so second is 6081BB, which is the exemption for designated areas. So that's sunsetting on June 30th, 2029. And then also the language on the housing jurisdictional thresholds that we talked about yesterday. All of those are also being sunset on June 30th, 2029.
Whatever it was, like 30, 50, 75 stuff.
10, 30, 75, yes. And part of the intent there is that the sections of this bill we haven't got to yet, under the new tier system, location-based jurisdiction will be up and running and will probably have its own jurisdictional triggers that would replace these.
So B on line 5, it's reminding me that part of what this committee added years ago, with priority housing projects, was that they were built to a stretch code. And the point behind that was that they were particularly efficient, so it made them particularly affordable for the long. A higher initial upfront investment, but the testimony we took at the time was. It added something like 3% over the cost of quality development, was described. But then it yielded a lifelong dividend or carrying costs. For that residents for all part of it.
You're right, and this is something actually we haven't talked about in a while, so you added it because Act 250 is currently one of the only enforcement mechanisms for the RVs and the CVs. And if you're by exempting affordable housing projects, you were exempting them from potential enforcement and making sure they were built to the RVs and the CVs. So RVs and CVs are not always, I don't know how much, yes, you may want to just think about that as something for all those other exemptions.
Well, it sounds like it's something that evaporates with the loss of priority housing projects.
Well,
We
and
enforce more-
all the other exemptions of this bill.
Well, and, yeah. But, I'll just guess out, but. We so often have heard about the need for affordable housing and by eliminating priority housing projects with their mandatory minimum 20% affordable housing. I'm not sure that we're keeping our eye on affordability. But that's an open question. So I need to learn more. Not saying just don't want to lose track of what we erased. Senator Lawrence.
Thank you. One of the conversations that we had in the RVs and CVs bill that we just did was about how there is very little enforcement of RVs and CVs in general. And so when you say this is one of the only mechanisms for enforcement, because no one is really checking post construction.
Right.
And so when you say enforcement, do you mean like?
Criterion 9F. You can demonstrate compliance with criterion 9F by submitting evidence that the project is going to meet the stretch code.
And so if we exempt all these projects, they don't have to meet criteria 9F, no one else is, well, one hypothesis is that municipality might have their own requirements, but they may not. Yeah. Okay.
And I think you were making a comment, but it's unusually active on that
Yes.
idea that's built to an energy code. Burlington is having to.
Yes, right, and that is the exception. That's the unusual.
Can you remind us, please, what is, I can't remember the number straight, 9F is what?
Energy conservation.
Okay,
So, yeah, so it asks, will it reflect the principles of energy conservation, including reduction of greenhouse gases from the use of energy and incorporate best available technology for efficient use or recovery of, energy? And an applicant seeking, finding under this criteria shall provide evidence that the subdivision or development complies with the building energy standards under 30 VSA 51 and 53, the RVs and the CVs.
thanks, Susan. Yeah, once upon a time, I think some of this came up, Sarah McCormick, you might recall, there was a development in Manchester that I think was all electric resistance heating. Or Senator McDonald, you were maybe the one who shared the story, so it was a high load and an inefficient way of heating. Okay, thank you for that. Enough ramifications for the grid. That's good. That is the issue.
Actually, 50 hearings in what was then for Johnson in its previous name.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so section,
Then, you know, let's go to 11:30 and transition to the 213 stuff so that we have a brief break because we have 3 reports to fill coming up. One.
So
okay, so section 9 shifts to municipal zoning. So the next 10 or so sections are on municipal zoning. So first, section 9 is amending some language in the language on the municipal plan. So on the municipal plan housing element, that element shall include a recommended program for public and private actions to address housing needs and targets as identified by the Regional Planning Commission. So there is a requirement that there be housing targets for towns. And the program shall use data on year-round and seasonal dwellings. So some really minor tweaks to the regional plan or to the town plan. Next on page 10, section 10. Okay, this is a big one. There's a few changes in here. So this is amending 24 VSA 4412. But we haven't talked about municipal zoning for a while in here. So 4412 is an important statute in chapter 117 on municipal zoning. It sets up the list of things that municipalities can't do in their zone. they have pretty broad authority to enact zoning policies if they choose. So I'm working backwards here. Zoning is optional. If a town wants to adopt zoning, they have broad authority to do so and do as much or as little as they want. But 4412 and 4413 and to some extent 4414 identify things that they cannot do. So 4412 is amending some language that you adopted last year. On line 12, bylaws shall designate appropriate districts and regional regulations for municipal, for multi-unit or multifamily dwellings. No bylaw shall have the effect of excluding multi-unit or multifamily dwellings from the municipality. In any district that allows year-round residential development, duplexes shall be a permitted use with dimensional standards that are not more restrictive than is required for a single unit dwelling, including no additional land or lot area than would be required for a single unit dwelling. So last year you added this language that duplexes are an allowed use. So allowed does mean that a municipality can do some review of that, they can do conditional use review. But permitted means that they, it is a permitted use and they are not doing conditional use review of them. So it is being more permissive for duplexes. And it is also saying that they can't require more restrictive standards for the duplex and for a single family home, including no additional land or lot area than would be required for a single unit dwelling.
Thank you. So on line 16, an allowed use versus permitted use. Are we saying that, as I read it, and I'm learning here, so, permitted use sounds more restrictive. It is not.
Because it's permitted, not permanent.
Very good.
Okay.
And allowed is like, well, it's allowed, but we're gonna look at it.
Sorry.
No, I,
That
and
is,
so listen, last year we went back and forth on these terms because they're kind of close.
yes, the process being on the wrong syllable. Yeah, okay. Sorry, thank you.
It's on
This is.
Yes, yes.
This is confusing.
And
Okay,
it is zoning charge. It is.
fair enough.
So-
I can accept that.
It does not mean requiring a permit, it means it is permitted,
without any conditions applied.
yes.
Just change that language, clarity's.
Well, there's probably a body of law that comports with these terms, right?
Yeah, we have to get some planners in here and like work on that, cause I don't think it would be a small fix, I'd have it like, it'd be a systemic change.
752 instances of these words elsewhere.
Permitted means no one's stopping. Permitted means you got the document.
So,
I think it's the other way around.
it's actually,
I
so,
think so.
so I'll just say,
But they're spelled.
the say. The municipal zoning statutes until last year or 2 years ago were very broad. It didn't actually use these terms because we gave them broad authority. And so particularly last year in S100, you added a lot of specificity. So it's actually, I'm not even sure if there actually are many uses of either of these verbs in statute. It actually is a term of art used in zoning. So like if you look at a town's zoning, you can usually see a chart that says permitted, allowed, not, or something. It's P, A, something, whatever the last category is, which is like basically no. Yes. So this is not something that I mean, I could attempt to change it, but we don't usually, cause it's using permit in a different word, not a piece of paper, but. You have permission to do so blanket, whereas allowed is something that is conditional. Permitted is yes. Allowed is maybe.
Okay.
Learning zoning has been very interesting because most of it is not a statute, and so I apologize, because I know people can sometimes be frustrated with my explanations, but I'm learning a lot of it. Off the clock, because it's not in the statutes to figure out, and so, yes, so the distinction here is that. Last year you did say. Duplexes can be built. But a town can still subject them to conditional use review, which may actually limit them. This is saying. The town they are permitted under the zoning, so the town has to allow them.
Well, and I remember part of the conversation was when you duplex and you have a driver to move from one car. Where the other cars? go? In some places, there's room on the street, other places, people. Sometimes,
We'll talk about parking, parking is so controversial.
well, I'm just gonna say, they have parking on the lawn. Which I'd say just for some neighborhoods, yes, becomes an issue and,
Sure, so this is though a little bit different, there's another angle here, which is. A single existing building can potentially already be carved into 2 units, and so some towns, I think, are requiring additional land.
right,
And so the Senate Economic Development Committee is interested in having that be limited, that no, if you're.
I get it completely, I mean, we're trying to have more dense development. Don't allow for a condition that effectively prevents duplex. Okay, but the ramifications of duplex, they're what?
I'm not so interested in changing the word, I just want Simone to understand, but. I feel clearer on it. Thank you.
No, it's important because it comes up. Well. So last year, you did also pass the next sentence. Which. Uses allows. Sorry, that uses permitted.
As permitted,
Yeah.
not permitted. Yep. A piece of paper rather than.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yes, but I was more pointing out that in the next section, you allow for, in the next sentence. Multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be permitted. On a lot that are at least 1/3 of an acre. In size with an allowed density of up to 12 units per acre. Unless that district specifically requires multi-unit structures that have. More than 4 dwelling units, so this is just to say that last year you passed these 2 sentences for duplexes and fourplexes. And duplexes, it was allowed. And fourplexes, it was permitted. So now it is putting them at the same. Birth.
So it's actually gives them permission to move forward.
Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine. What the problem would look like if there were a problem. And I'm having trouble coming up with hypotheticals, but. The fact is, you have one word that really does make 2 different things. For example, you're correct, or keep it as an adjective. As a verb, the verb to permit. But it's also an adjective.
Yes,
A permitted use is
Yeah.
a characteristic of the.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a problem or not. Generally, you want, it's one of the reasons why I always defend legalese for people who find legalese annoying and tedious, and I say, it's really specific. It's annoying and tedious because we go to the trouble of making sure we're saying what we mean and not something else. And
yeah, I think that the problem here is that this isn't actually like legalese, it's planner speak.
but it's the law.
No, I know, but
Yes.
it is not, I would not, we don't need to go down this rabbit hole, honestly, but this language came from planners, not lawyers. And they spoke in planners speak and put it in the statute, in my opinion. So. Were you to go back and, rewrite the sentence and then. Pick a consistent term that was perhaps more descriptive,
Yeah.
I think you could do that, but. This is a statute that is reviewed by planners and zoning administrators, and they contributed to the language,
They know what we mean.
yeah.
And clarity is always helpful. Let's see if we can finish this section.
No,
No,
I mean,
lots
we
more.
can try,
It's only,
okay, we can try.
Foolish idea maybe, it's only one page, but sometimes there's a lot in a sentence sort of here.
Great, so cause what I did was. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about the 1/3 of an acre with up to 12, or we don't have to, There, you may wanna take testimony on this issue, so you passed this language last year about fourplexes. But you did also say elsewhere that municipalities have to allow, in the next section.
Yeah.
5 or more dwelling units per acre.
Right, I remember that 4 versus 5 conversation.
Yes, and so could that lead to 20 units per acre? Perhaps.
Or.
So this language is being added at the bottom of page 10 into 11 to, clarify that, so. Multi-unit dwellings on lots of at least 1/3 of an acre. Allowing for a density of up to 12 units per acre.
Because otherwise you could have had 5 dwellings per acre, they all get. Multiplex 4 units, and then it's your 5 times 4, 20, all on a single acre.
Potentially without some additional clarity. Because. The next subsection 12 does address 5 units per acre. So, yes, so I think there was some confusion about how those two. Requirements meshed.
So this is an attempt to clarify. You're not
Yes.
go for density higher than 12 units per acre.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. It sounds like a lot until you're starting the buildings to go up. Right,
right. So do you wanna keep going? So 12 is a bit about what I was just talking about, so, in an area served by municipal water and sewer that allows residential development, bylaws shall establish lot and building dimensional standards that allow 5 or more dwelling units per acre for each residential use. Any lot that is smaller than 1 acre, but granted a variance of not more than 10%, shall be treated as 1 acre for purposes of this subsection. Density and minimum lot size standards for multi-unit dwellings shall not be more restrictive than those for single family dwellings. So the underlying language here is attempting to, again, clarify language that you added last year in subsection 12 about these additional density requirements. And so again, it's saying density and minimum lot size on multi-units should not be more restrictive than for single family.
Say ditches are. It's good for the ditch that will remove stormwater from a single family house. Is the one that would remove it from a multi-family house.
I don't know anything about ditches, if that's required in zoning. I don't know, is stormwater an A&R issue?
What does the language say?
This is not about ditches, this is about density and minimum lot size.
Okay.
So then, there's 2 other provisions in this section still, so 13, again, 12 and 13 were added last year in the Home Act, so. 13 is a density bonus, so affordable housing, including mixed use development. Can exceed the density limitations for residential development by an additional 40%, rounded up to the nearest whole unit. If it's in, areas with sewer and water. So this is again clarifying last year's new language about rounding up to the nearest whole unit. And then Finally, subsection 14 is a new concept entirely. No zoning or subdivision bylaw shall have the effect of prohibiting unrelated occupants from residing in the same dwelling unit. So this is what's known as a functional family zoning provision, and so, it is common in some other parts of the country to restrict who can live in a building.
Oh, yeah.
Requiring that they be related. Right, so, from the testimony in, we don't know how widespread this zoning provision is in Vermont, I'm not aware of it. But there was testimony that Burlington does have has a family provision on the books. They don't necessarily enforce it, I don't know, you may wanna hear about that, but this is prohibiting that. Great. Mr. Chairman.
If you're in a college town, that would be.
Well, that's actually the intent, right, is to thwart college students, too many college students living together.
Yeah.
And then, but it does have other implications for.
I can't imagine why anyone would worry about that. But, okay, better way.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm familiar with this as it relates to women and how they did want women to be living together alone. Is there any? Do we make sure that there's no, I mean, I know we have equal housing protections, all of that. In this instance, you could also, it's addressing that concern as well, where we had laws that said, hey, if you're two or more unmarried, unrelated women, no go, you can't live together alone.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It has,
Are we
it's,
exposing that as an amendment?
No, I would propose no more than 5 women in one house, that's my.
it comes up for college students, it comes up for a lot of minority groups,
Yes.
honestly. And different family structures are impacted by it.
Yes.
There was.
Well, I think I'm just repeating your question, because I want to make sure I'm understanding, so elsewhere. That is already prohibited, like you can't have a zoning requirement that prevents women from living together.
I don't know.
So we
So-
could add it here as like, cause
So
like you couldn't have a gender-based zoning.
So I don't know that. John handles like fair housing and Damien handles discrimination, so I don't know things that I honestly don't know I have enough.
Yeah,
So,
fair enough.
so I don't know off the top of my head, if any, some other discrimination provisions have prevented that specific instance.
Okay,
This is the language that was requested, so we'll just go on in the zoning statute.
Okay.
cool.
I would just flag if maybe we may be in agreement on this, if there was a way that municipalities could be doing that, I would like them to not be able to do that.
Would be,
Cause that's,
seems like a
so as soon
bizarre,
as Senator Watson, I
bizarre
agree on that point.
I don't think a bizarre prohibition, but maybe we need to be explicit about it, okay? So that takes us to the end of 10.
Out of the.
Sorry, I was like flippant, I'm sorry, I was flippant about
So
it, I just
we'll
don't know.
resume, on 11 next time, page 12, okay, great, thank you so much for helping us make our way through. But you know, and I think I'll just say for the room that anybody who worries that we're asking questions about the, you know, when you start asking questions about how Act 250 works, doesn't work, etc. Some people imagine that there's some sort of hostility to housing, for instance, so I wanted to ask such questions. I just want to reassure people watching. This is like a due diligence function that we're executing. And we're supportive of housing. We do want to know how the tools work.
Thank you, Mr. Chick.
Okay, thank you. So now we're gonna shift gears and go to S 213, which is up on the floor today. As I mentioned before,
Yes.
Senate Appropriations asked us to review 213. I think they asked me to review on behalf of the committee, the costs and work demands related to study group. So And then, of course, they did their own thing on the money. So there is a copy, does everyone have a
Everyone
copy?
does.
Okay, so it's this document.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jude. So I just want to have us go through it together, so we all knew what's in here. And then take a committee position on it, so when the floor wonders whether or not this was a hostile amendment to our underlying bill, we can report out. So I guess I'll walk you through it. So in the very first one, this was on the river border maps section, what's that? In its second instance, this is related, the National Flood Insurance Program. We're talking about having a working group to help work on NFIB. There was just one town, one municipality listed, and I asked Michael to change it to 2 people and then use a population trigger. So we have from a population 5,000 or more, and for less than 5,000, because we didn't have basically large towns and small towns can be very different. And so it just makes the panel bigger by, it takes off, back up one more step. This removes legislators from each of the study groups. And I thought this was an okay thing to do because the reports would come to us. We would take testimony on them, we could learn from the work of the study group. The other thing is, when I've been in work groups, legislators have sat in informally if they wanted to know about what was going on. So legislators are out, and then there's one addition here to cover large towns and small towns. And that's line 17 through 20. Is that right?
Very comfortable with those changes. I think it makes sense. I'm confused about the first bit. Yeah, what does that do? That doesn't feel, you're striking out section 3, which section 3 is the river corridor infill map. So we're striking section 3. We're striking out subsection C within subsection 3.
Subsection C, and let me get my own copy of the full bill so I can see what it's thinking.
So that would be what it is.
Which got the eyes plus the T's here.
This is the appropriation. So we're also taking out the $900,000 worth of appropriation. That's what's in subsection C. And the 6 new full-time positions. So that's a pretty substantial change.
Well,
Is it being done to put it in the appropriations bill, or is it
Yeah.
being done to throw it over the bank?
no, it's being,
Same question.
Senator Kitchell reiterated clearly her support the bill and that. But it is their, as you point out, it's their habit, their MO. They strip out positions, they strip out money. And they hold them until they're working on the budget as a whole, and then reinsert funding and positions. And so, I expressed the concern when I was in there. That one, we needed to, unless ANR said that there was some sort of phased hiring going. As best I knew, all these positions needed to be funded for FY25, and all the funds needed to be put in. I also reiterated that we're looking for base budget funding because it's an ongoing expense, not any one-time funds. And almost before I could finish the sentence, Senator Kitchell said, we're not going to be using one-time money for an ongoing expense. But I just, I think we all want to keep our eye on the ball on how this is funded, what level, because as we get closer to the finish line and see what the money looks like, I would like to try to live up to what I said in here with genuine intent, which is if there is going to be less money, we should adjust the tasks so that we're not asking for work that we're not paying for. And I think, we're not in charge of that, so, but we can weigh in.
And the same is done with the other appropriation section in section 27, and then in subsection 28, it's just what you're referring to before. The membership of it.
So in each of the three study groups. We go through and. So for instance, if you see line 6 through 8 on page 2, striking out Office of Legislative Counsel. The legislators aren't on the committees anymore, and the study committees are then therefore housed. I was saying before, for instance. The RVs and CVs working group, the Department of Public Services manages that. And so Department of Public Service this past summer led the RVs and CVs work. In a similar way, working groups are at the request of approach, rehoused in their sort of natural agency or department. And that means legislative council goes out, and in this case, agency and natural resources.
Okay,
Compensation reimbursement is listed on 11-14 because. Well, the legislators are part, this is from three places. It used to say legislators got paid this way and non-legislators got paid according to this scheme. Now it's skinnied up, there are no legislators, so you don't have to say legislators are paid their normal daily rates and non-legislators are paid according to the 32 VSA 1010. So that's the skinnying up that's going on in G. Same, so third, fourth, again, appropriations, fourth instance appropriations, fifth instance. Goes on to page 3. You have 213 open center white.
I do.
I'm having a little trouble.
What are
flipping
you
back and
hoping?
forth. Yeah, so fifth instances strikes out, it's, sorry about that. It's just apparent. It's the positions at advanced safety. Section 21
Yeah, this
is appropriations, I think, for advanced safety, that same division. Sixth is the rehousing of the study group to UDC or ANR.
Yep.
Same thing happens in G 16 through 19 on the bottom of page 3. And there are no legislators, so the compensation language changes.
Yeah.
7th, transition then subsection D. What are, without having it in front of me, section 1110 and shall be completed. We're striking what there, 87.
Okay. You're looking, this is under section.
Section
D.
24. Subsection D. And then within it, section 1110 sub 6.
The committee on. Regional emergency action.
1110.
You got it. Okay, so I just want to make sure we're striking exactly the right thing.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Did you find?
I believe this is page 50, is that what you're referring to? Is this the?
They not use us.
So this is section 17, I'm all over the place.
all right, and the 8th instance of amendment, page 4, appropriations allowed. Replaced with the word deleted. 9th instance of amendment, study committee on enrollment, spelled with 1 L. Floodplain management use. Another Scrivener's error. The use value. So we strike out subsections, subdivisions 1 and 2, and remember.
Okay, very close. Okay, yes, I see. Okay, no, it's page 53 is what we're doing with that fifth instance of it. Okay,
So it's subsection B strikes out subdivisions 1 and 2. And
One
those
current member.
correspond to.
yeah, so that's one current member of the House of Reps and one current member of the Senate. Okay, and then we keep everything else, the regional planning commissions. Okay.
So that's the legislators come out.
And we remove the PUC before.
So that's the gist. Senator McDonald.
What we've just gone through is consistent with appropriations practice of taking the appropriations out of this such bills as this one and putting them in the big bill. Did the committee on appropriations say that they were removing them for the purpose of putting them in the big bill?
Yes.
Then it'll go down. And their report.
So you can read that.
So a term,
Yes, so believe so. Senator. I don't know who's reporting on, Senator Lyons is reporting on behalf of
so this is not
appropriations.
this is not would only be alarming if suddenly there was a change in the way that appropriations approaches bills like this one, and there's no indication that they no reason to. Right, maybe no
Yeah.
warning signs that it is perfectly normal.
Frankly, the only surprise to me would have been if they left all the. In this, because that was a unique treatment, this bill, all other. Senator Watson?
Yes, thank you.
So it's down on news then.
Well, I just want to correct the record to section 24 was not about the regional emergency action plans, it's about transition to the jurisdiction from PUC to the to DEC. And I guess I have a question. So in the seventh
Sure.
instance amendment, which in our amendment draft is on page 3, line 20, says in section 24. And in subsection D after. Sorry, can you just help me understand?
Fish out the bill, I know, it's like one of those things that it's a very opaque. Way of amending a bill, instance, I mean,
Yeah,
these technical ins and outs. Okay, so we're on section 24, then we got a page number. From the bill itself, it's. Not very much.
24, we're
I'm looking at the
looking at
calendar, so.
I have,
between 57 and 59.
in subsection D, the ruling of this act.
Yeah, this page, top to page 58. So we're striking that section.
No, it's just that, okay, we have. Gotta go chase down where. Making better than under 6 and 7 shall be completed. You know, I'm gonna want to ask,
So they want to strike out
Yes. It's just that we take out 11, 10, it's on 6. So we, under 11, 10, 7, after the edit, we're striking. 6, then I don't, so this is, thank you for asking the question. It seems like a technical edit that Mr. O'Grady is providing.
So it's just striking out the 7 as a reference there, so that means I can figure out what the, as a reference to.
Yeah.
7 should be further up on section 18. So let's go to section 18 and see what 7 is.
I think it's 111.
All right,
It might just be,
Mr. Chair.
yes,
I have this-
Jerry,
Jared Carpenter, Lake Champlain Committee. I have the same problem as well. If you go to page 47, I believe If you look down, it ends at 6 and there is no 7. So it's really, like you said,
Oh,
an editing change more than anything else. At least that was my interpretation.
Okay,
Yep, I'm seeing that now.
great.
okay.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Reedy never mentioned to me that there was a technical fix in it, so I would. When I read through before, I thought we were squared away on just committee structure and money. So, thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Take the village, through the bill. All right, so those are all the edits, and I don't know if anyone wants to discuss anything more, but chase down, I think you. I don't know much for it. Carrie Moore.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, for the record, Julie Moore, A and R
Would you like to
Services.
join us at the table?
Just a couple of items. One is the study that was just being discussed around the regional emergency action plans. I think rightly belongs with Vermont Emergency Management within the Department of Public Safety as opposed to ANR. They're sort of the lead on that, and so would encourage that committee be redirected. Would also just acknowledge, we did not include any resources in our requests to staff or pay per diems for these study groups, because at drafted, they were sitting with the legislature.
Absolutely.
And so there is no resources available to support them. And have real concerns about the expanded level of effort required by the agency to lead on the flood hazard study area. I assume public safety may have similar concerns, but don't want to speak for Commissioner Morris.
So, the dam emergency plans, you're suggesting
The study group related to those,
under. Department of Emergency Management.
well, Vermont Emergency Management is part of the Department of Public Safety, so I'm not sure what your
Okay,
nomenclature or how you approach those, but that is the end.
all right, so, we can look into it before the reading possibly, or chase it down when it goes through that. Okay, thank you for that, and understood, right, there's. Those per diems usually are just supported through the general fund as opposed to, but if you were. You were managing the group and then paying per diem, they would, of course, need to be transferred to your fund. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else in the room have any questions, comments on 213? Okay. I see Commissioner Herrick in the room, which reminds me, so all done with 213. Oh, do we need to have a committee?
Straw poll.
Yeah, so the straw poll is, all those in favor of supporting, regarding favorably the recommendation of amendments from appropriations, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so report 500 of the minute. Thank you very much. As I was saying, Commissioner Harris in the room, good morning. And which is reminding me, we have talked about 258
Oh, okay.
on the calendar. We're also talking about possible amendment
Yeah,
to try to see if we can bridge some gaps between different points of view and move the bill forward. The pro tem is our point person on that, and so he is involved in discussions with different folks, and I hope before today is over, we've gotten to a point where we're finding agreement. I'm not assuming that that means agreement on the part of the committee, but we're getting to the best yes we can, and then we'll look at it and as a committee decide that's, an amendment that we can support.
so Mr. Chair, can I just repeat back to you so I understand what you're saying? Our Senate Pro Tem is working on an amendment that would be coming from appropriations.
Actually, I think that it will be, like, I would be offering.
You would be offering the amendment, you are working with, so it would be an amendment coming from you. You're working with the pro tem to come up with that language because he's our pro tem. And
That's what they do.
that's what they do. And then you would be bringing that amendment to the committee for us to consider and discuss.
Yeah.
Then we would
Just like
be,
we going to.
just like with
213.
this. we'd be doing a straw poll on that, and then you would be doing the amendment on
And
that.
I would offer it.
You would offer, okay, and just so I understand, it's not going through appropriations, it's not going through finance, there's no other committees that are reviewing it. At this point, this is kind of our final buttoning up
I propose to them,
proposal, yes.
yeah, to be
Yes,
considered.
Do you have you know what, I'll wait.
Okay.
I'm so excited to hear what the compromises that you've come to.
I have a similar level of excitement and engagement on the decision. Yeah, so I, you know, there isn't anything finished for us to look at yet.
And you're reporting the bill,
Yes,
okay, some folks had asked me if I was reporting the bill, I don't know why, but I'm not, you are,
yes.
correct?
So if this amendment gets sorted out today, then we, we'll bring it in here tomorrow morning. And then we would go through it, and that would mean we'd be in a position that 258 would be called up. There's a long list of bills on our calendar. I don't know if we would naturally get to it, but anyway, if it came up tomorrow, we're called up tomorrow. If we have the amendment squared away, be in a position to move the bill on the floor. Okay, and that brings us to 1:12, so. Thank you everyone for a productive morning, thanks for tolerating doing 4 different things and sequence determined by when council is available. Breakaway, teacher teams going to the floor, very exciting, 7 weeks work. Love to see this move. And thanks for, so we have for tag team wrestling report. I'll start, and it goes to Senator White, then it goes to Senator Watson, then it goes to Senator White.
So we are gonna do,
Then finish.
right, and I'm gonna yield the floor to the senator from Washington, who will then yield the floor back to the senator from Windsor. And then I'm gonna yield the floor back to the senator from Addison to do closing thoughts.
I'll just close and our witness list.
Right,
And then we're good.
and then the other senator from Windsor will.
Cheer.
I just want to make sure I'm not in that script.
We know. While you're out of the room, well, there was
It'll be heavy considered.
I don't want to hold out on the floor.
Section 1 through 57.
Yeah, you only have the first 13 sections, other than that, nothing
Go ahead.
to handle.
I'll stop when it's.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear.
Okay,